Ko Puttaparani.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, talofa lava. I preface my presentation tonight, Mr. Speaker, acknowledging our Pacific Island relatives. And given the contribution that they've made to the industrial development of our country, I think that they would be very disappointed in the budget, particularly as it affects them and the contribution and the amount that's been allocated for them. And just over 8 million has been allocated to the to Vote Pacific Island Ministry. And of course, one of the things that was mentioned in the budget, that there will be a name change to the department. And I just wonder how much that will cost, and whether or not the funding involved in that change of name could have been better utilized in terms of the development of that community. I also want to make the point that there was a program running in Auckland where they had 1.1 million previously allocated to that program. This budget only provides them with 50,000 because it's seen as the end of the program. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the need for such a program should be maintained, but that has not been recognized in this year's budget. And I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, because given the debate so far, particularly from that side of the House, no mention has ever been made of that part of our community. They talk about diversity and the need to get on with the rest of our fellow men. But in terms of this budget reflecting the needs of that community, it is very limited. Mr. Speaker, I now want to move on to the main part of my contribution to this debate tonight, and that is in the area of Maori affairs. On Budget Day, we heard from the Minister of Maori Development, the leader of the Maori Party, just how much they had contributed to this year's budget, and the fact that they were responsible for a lot of the funds that have been allocated in the direction of Maori affairs. But a closer analysis of the figures will show that there really isn't any new money. What they've done is just moved around the different allocations and told us that they were responsible for an increased level of funding for portfolio Maori affairs. One of the elements of the contribution to that part of the budget, Mr. Speaker, was the reference to whānau order. And any discussion on this part of the budget without the mention of whānau order would be very remiss. And so I want to remind this House that of the 137 million already allocated to this program, 40 million has been allocated towards administration. And I want to say that when the officials came before the Maori Affairs Select Committee and they were questioned about this program, we asked, what was the major issue facing whānau order? The response was to inform people as to what it was. After 5 years in existence, that was the only response that they could come up with. And in spite of a damning report from the Office of the Auditor General, what does the budget provide? Another 50 million. Another 50 million, Mr. Speaker, for a program that, while it does have its merits, I'll be the first to say that, but I think the way it's been administered and managed certainly does bring the program into disrepute. What it does, it passes the responsibility of government to service providers out in the community. And therein lies the difficulty, Mr. Speaker, and I wonder about the value of this budget giving further funding to a program that clearly is in disarray. And I'm not being critical of those service providers out there who are clearly making the best effort to deliver something that the government is responsible for. So I just want to remind the Minister of Maori Affairs and the Maori Party that while they might jump up and down with glee about being able to sit at the table, at the end of the day, it depends where you are sitting at that table, whether it's underneath or at the head of the table. And I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that the Maori Party is certainly not sitting at the head of the table, notwithstanding the joy that they might have in terms of the level of funding that they've been able to get out of this budget. Almost $220 million sounds a lot, but when we have a look at the way that they've split it up, one needs to question some of the decisions that have been made in this area. And I want to comment about the allocation made to the specific Maori potential programs, including Maori Registration Service, Maori Wardens, New Zealand Maori Council, and Maori Women's Development Fund. I want to say that when New Zealand First were part of the Treasury benches, we were able to get $7 million alone just for the Maori Wardens. All of a sudden, we see in this year's budget, and of course it's headed a plan that's working, that level of funding is being reduced. And I just wonder why that is the case, given that the Maori Wardens are one of the few groups within the Maori community who have been very successful in caring for their community with nothing. Also want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that if what the leader of the Maori Party said, that they'd done so much for the Maori community, then why is it that after 8 years that they've been associated with the government in power, that Maori make up the worst figures in all of the social indices: unemployment, poor housing, low income. Now, to me, that suggests that the Maori Party isn't all cracked up as they would like us to believe. The other thing is the question that they've had to provide funding for rangatahi Māori suicide. Just over 2 million, Mr. Speaker. Now, if we're having to provide funding for that sort of issue, then that begs the question, what has the Maori Party been doing for the Maori community? Why is it that suicide rates amongst young Maori is the highest in this country? And I've got to ask that question of the Maori Party, because if they say that they're that good, then why is it that we're having such a poor...
That's all.
The other thing is they talk about having gained 35.3 million investment for Maori housing. I can recall in the old Maori Affairs days, each region was able to build 60 new homes every year. This 35 million they talk about for housing is going to be over a number of years. So what's happened, Mr. Speaker? Is it because the predominant party in the government has overtaken the Maori Party, and that they're not as effective as they would like us to believe? Mr. Speaker, while the government may talk about how good this budget is, at the end of the day, it ends up in the wrong colour. Red, red, red. Kia ora.